Hi, everyone. So, today we're going to be talking about the importance of parenting. Specifically speaking, we will be exploring the effect of parenting style on identity statuses, risk behaviors, and self esteem in college students. This presentation is brought to you by Lucy Bonji, me, Grace Scartman, Carmen Nichols, and Emma Snyder. For our introduction, to give you more of a background on what parenting styles is, or the types of parenting styles there are. Authoritarian, which is associated with control and excessive rules. Children are often facing harsh punishments if they disobey their parents. Authoritative, they're focused on free exploration, clearly set limitations, fluid dialogue, and have a understanding between the parent and the child. Permissive parenting is linked to a high level of involvement with children, but little reinforcement of rules or expectations. Parenting styles has an impact on the level of exploration and commitment during identity development for a child. Parenting styles also influences self-esteem, self-esteem levels. To be even more specific on the specific parenting styles, authoritative and permissive parenting leads to higher self-esteem. Authoritarian parenting leads to lower self-esteem. Parenting styles also affects participation in risk behaviors, with higher incidence following permissive and authoritarian parenting, and lower incidence being correlated with authoritative parenting. The four different identity status that we chose to explore in this project were achievement, foreclosure, moratorium, and diffusion. Achievement is independently explored options and settled on who they are meant to be in commitment. Foreclosure they have not explored all, but had their identities handed out for them, dictated for them. Moratorium is exploring with no identity commitment and are unsure of what to do, so they're in the lost. Diffusion is disregard the need to ascertain their identity at all, and are not really exploring themselves and not even trying to commit to anything. So the research we did for identity status, we found out that identity status were linked to parenting styles as well, which appears to predict exploration and commitment while the individual itself themselves is developing their identity. Identity status also predicts self-esteem levels, with more committed identities having higher self-esteem and less committed ones having lower self-esteem. Identity status also impacts risk behaviors, where more committed is less has a less incidence of risk behavior, and being less committed to their identity has a higher incidence of risk behavior. So our hypothesis is that authoritarian and permissive parenting will lead to lower levels of identity commitment and exploration, higher risk behaviors. For our hypothesis for the authoritative parenting, they will lead to higher self-esteem, higher identity commitment and exploration, and lower risk behaviors. Our hypothesis for the permissive parenting will lead to higher self-esteem, and our hypothesis for the authoritarian parenting will lead to lower self-esteem. And next, my partner, Carmen Nichols, will go over the method section. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carmen, and I'm going to take you through the methods section of our study this semester. So in the study, the participants consisted of 90 college students, all ranging in age from 18 to 23. 70 of them identified as women, 18 as men, and 2 had self-identified genders. 59 of the participants identified as white, 10 as Latinx, 8 as Black, 8 as a mixed race, 4 as Asian, and 1 as undisclosed. Of the participants, 67 of them reached achievement status, 14 were in moratorium, 12 in diffusion, and 0 in foreclosure. 51 of the participants indicated having authoritative parents, 35 had authoritarian, and 7 had permissive. And in the questions for the identity status section were too generalized to differentiate what the participants were achieved in versus what they were still in moratorium in. For example, they were asked to rate on a scale between strongly agree and strongly disagree, with general statements such as, I'm still trying to decide how capable I am as a person and what jobs would be right for me, which was taken directly from the modified identity status interview in the questionnaire. So of the materials in this study, it consisted of a demographic questionnaire, which had questions consisting of age, race, ethnicity, parent marital status, and year in college. We also used the modified parental authority questionnaire, which measured the experience of discipline one has growing up. It consisted of 30 questions and was to be answered on a scale from 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. We used the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, which measured an individual's feelings of self in the world, which consisted of 10 questions from 1 to 4, strongly disagree to strongly agree. We used the modified identity status interview, which measured individuals' feelings of identity, values, and social life. It consisted of 40 questions and was to be answered on a scale 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. We also used elements of the risky and self-destructive behavior questionnaire, as well as many of the risk-taking behaviors in a survey conducted by Schneider and Morris in 1991, which highlighted the risks that college students were more likely to take, including alcohol, sex, and drug use. The reason being was of the concern of the length of the risky and self-destructive behavior questionnaire not fitting into a Qualtrics survey. It consisted of 22 questions and was to be answered in a yes or no format. In the procedure section of our study, the participants were to be recruited via the SONA system or another social media platform. In the Qualtrics survey, they were shown an informed consent, taken to the demographic survey, and then the other randomized surveys. After they were done answering the questions, they were taken to a debriefing form and given the option to withdraw their data. They were also shown other concluding resources. Those who were in a general psych course were compensated with academic credit for their time.
All right, hey guys, my name is Grace, and I'll be talking about the results from our study. So first off, we conducted a bivariate correlation, and then we ran the regressions on those that were significant correlations. So first off, all parenting styles were all significant predictors of self-esteem, except authoritarian parenting style, which was negatively correlated. So meaning in terms of if permissive or authoritative parenting style is occurring, there is a likely chance that the children will have a higher self-esteem compared to having an authoritarian parenting style would have a lower self-esteem. And then so our next variable that we tested was risky sexual behavior. And for that, we found that authoritative was positively predictive of risky sexual behavior with a p-value of 0.042, as well as prescription drug abuse with a p-value of 0.032. And then looking next for permissive as well, it was a positive predictor of risky behavior as well with a p-value of 0.009. And then from this, we can infer that there was significantly more risky sexual behavior, for example, like unsafe sex, and as well as prescription drug abuse with both of these parenting styles. And then going into our next variable with these correlations, we tested to see if parenting styles were predictors of alcohol abuse. So first off, permissive parenting ended up being a positive predictor of alcohol abuse with a p-value of less than 0.011, and then meaning that there was a significantly higher alcohol abuse when this parenting style was present. And then looking on the other hand, authoritarian parenting style had a negative predictor of alcohol abuse, and that p-value was 0.011. And then lastly, authoritative showed there was no significant correlation with a p-value of 0.087. And then our last variable that we were looking at, we tested was identity status. So we found that parenting styles were not significantly correlated with identity status, and this was a p-value of 0.934. In addition, the individual styles had no correlation with an individual's identity status. However, we did find that higher achievement scores were significant predictor of alcohol abuse, and that p-value was 0.004. And then moratorium and diffusion statuses were not correlated with risk behaviors, as well as having a negative predictor of self-esteem, and that had a p-value of 0.027. And then lastly, neither diffusion or achievement were significantly correlated. And now Emma will be talking to us about the discussion.
Hi, my name is Emma Snyder, and today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about our discussion. So kind of to summarize what we found, our authoritarian parenting variable, we were expecting to find that there would be more drug use and risk behaviors in this form, in the children, right, the offspring from this form of parenting, because they're more controlling typically in this style. That we would also had expected to find that they would be less committed to their identity statuses, perhaps because they felt kind of forced by their parents to be one way, and maybe they were rebelling a little bit against that, some negative reinforcement, and that we would also find lower self-esteem. And these were just kind of like findings from the scholarship that we had gathered. In our study, we found that instead of an elevated risk of any kind of risk behavior, we actually found that there was significantly less alcohol abuse with people who had had authoritarian parenting or greater authoritarian influence in the parenting style they experienced. There was no kind of significant connection to identity status, but we did replicate findings that authoritarian parenting seems to be linked to lower self-esteem. With authoritative parenting, the kind of middle ground ideal parenting, we were supposed to be finding, according to the scholarship, that there were less risk behaviors associated with this group, that they would have a more committed identity status because they had been given more opportunities to explore and find that for themselves, and that they would have higher self-esteem because this is a more parenting style associated with warmth. Our study, we found that there was significantly more risky sexual behavior and prescription drug abuse in this group. We found that there was no connection to identity status whatsoever, and that there was actually that higher self-esteem that we expected to find. With permissive parenting, we were looking to find that there was going to be more alcohol abuse in this, perhaps because their parents were very permissive, right? They were allowed to do whatever they wanted, that there would be less committed identity status because they weren't really concerned with finding an identity, and that they would have that higher self-esteem because their parents are giving them what they want. Our study found we were able to replicate that higher alcohol abuse finding, but however, we added to that by finding that permissive parenting is predictive of risky sexual behavior. We did not find a connection to identity status yet again, and we did find that there was also higher self-esteem there. So kind of just to get this all together, all three parenting styles were predictive of self-esteem levels in our study. Authoritarian led to less alcohol abuse. Authoritative was predictive of more risky sexual behavior and prescription drug abuse. Permissive parenting led to more alcohol abuse and risky sexual behavior. Moratorium was linked to lower self-esteem, which is important. We weren't really able to talk about that, but we were looking to find that each identity status as well was linked to self-esteem and risk behavior. We didn't really find that quite as greatly as we wanted to. The only two significant results we gleaned from that in our regression analysis was that moratorium was linked to lower self-esteem and that achievement was linked to less alcohol abuse. So achievement statuses are protective, right? They protect people from engaging in risky alcoholic behaviors because they've already found out who they are and they're comfortable with their identity. And moratorium, that seeking, right, led to that lower self-esteem because they hadn't established a firm identity. Our limitations, there were many. One was that our participant pool, the school that we gained most of our participants from, if not all, were not particularly risky, not known for partying, not known for unsafe sex or drugs or anything like that. So we had a really low threshold already for risk behavior. Permissive parenting that group, we had only 7 participants, so not a big kind of thing a big group to give us some kind of significance. We actually also had to erase foreclosure status. We had to take that away from our study because we only had 1 participant after data cleaning. Our demographics were primarily female and white, which is a huge issue given that some researchers have begun to find differences in the risk behaviors and self-esteem of people between genders and between races. So the fact that we really only had 1, that's not great. That's not what we want. But that's what we got. And our response completion, there were a lot of responses that weren't completed and weren't able to be used in the final results. Our conclusion is that we were able to replicate results in the scholarship on parenting and self-esteem, moratorium and self-esteem, and permissive parenting and alcohol abuse. All 3 of those findings we were able to replicate. We added to the field with our significant findings on lower alcohol abuse being associated with authoritarian parenting and achievement statuses, which is something we hadn't really seen in the field before. We also were able to add that we found risky sex and prescription drug abuse was higher with authoritative parenting, and that risky sex was higher with permissive parenting, which we hadn't also seen. Our big takeaway is that we need more clarity about parenting and identity. We were hoping to gain that from our study, but because of our participant pool, we're concerned that maybe we didn't get the results that everyone else is getting out here in the scholarship on some things like identity status and self-esteem and such, because we really only found that 1 link. We should have, had a bigger participant pool. Maybe that would have gleaned more significant results. And we also need to have more studies in the field with varying demographics, because having this really just, very similar SES statuses, similar race, similar gender is not a great way to go through this and to really find significant results that matter. Thank you for watching our presentation, and we will have our lovely references on the next slide.